What do you think? Do you like it? What do you think? What's this? Is that a no?
I've got some good news. We are finally at the weaving part. After all the time that I took in the past two videos to set up this project, we finally get to the part where we're making something, and I'm very excited. If you're new here and haven't seen the past two videos, no worries. You can start this in any order, this project journey. I'm just glad you're here, so why don't we all just go ahead and have some fun and get to working on this. Let's get started. The reason why I haven't talked about design that much yet with you all is because when I initially started setting up this project, I decided halfway through that I kind of wanted to go a little bit backwards with it. Instead of doing all the math and having a really strict pattern, I wanted it to be a little bit more freeform. I know weaving kind of has this reputation of being extremely precise and complicated, and in many cases it is. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I can be a really precise weaver when I want to, and I love taking the time to do all the math beforehand sometimes, but sometimes the only thing that's going to scratch that itch for me is doing something a little bit more freeform where I design on my loom or on my warping board. I don't tend to design on the warping board freeform that often just because it's hard to see, but when I'm working with my rigid Heddle loom and I'm warping and I can see how it looks while I put it together, I like doing freeform every once in a while. Originally, I did have a whole pattern planned out on, this is dot paper. Dot paper is my go-to for designing weaving projects. Having the grid makes it very easy to put things into bundles of set amounts of ends, but you don't have like the lines getting in the way of your design. So originally I had decided that I wanted 240 total ends. I had planned out a hem stitch for this, how to do the warp and weft, and you can see like this is me assigning stripes. But when I went to start doing this on my loom, I just wasn't feeling it. It just didn't seem right. It seemed a little bit more strict than what I wanted for this project. I wanted something that felt more in the moment, how I wanted to do. So I kept the initial colors that I wanted, this blue, which corresponds to this yarn here, the blues and yellows, and I wanted a golden tone to go with it. I kept those the same. And then the other part of the design that I will also keep is my weft will all be in this natural yarn that I have on my shuttle here. This is a KnitPicks. I think this is the Stroll. So it's a DK weight. I'll put down in the description all the specs on the yarn that I chose in case I'm a little bit off here. But I believe it's a DK weight merino nylon blend. So it's a little bit thicker than my warp, which is all fingering. And I chose that on purpose because these colors look really good together, but they also kind of clash. And I wanted to mellow them out by making something a little bit more weft facing. So I'm using a slightly thicker yarn to achieve that. I am going to put in some warp floats, I think. So we still have that pop of color, but I'm using a slightly thicker yarn in this natural color on purpose to try to tie it all together. So now that I have everything tied on and I ditched my original design for the most part, I have to do the math. So I've gone through and counted. I have 22 bundles with 12 strands each, and then I have this one bundle on the end that has 10 strands in it. So I have a total of 274 ends, and I need to take that into thought when I start looking at warp floats. so that I can decide if I'm going to do a warp float all the way across from end to end, or if it's going to start somewhere inside the weave and cut off the edges, because certain floats are going to have repeats of certain amounts. Kind of like when you knit or crochet, you might come across a stitch that requires a repeat of 4 stitches, a multiple of 4 total stitches, or something along those lines. It's the same thing for warp floats. So I'm going to go through my design book. Let's grab a tripod here. Please ignore the messy scrapbooking table. And we're going to start looking through some options. So not too many options. There's this sort of round pattern that we have here. Something very straight up and down, but still very round here. There's this one. I don't really like how tightly the weft is here, if you can see. Let me put this closer. As you can see, the weft is really blocked down in these sections without the floats, and I don't think that will look very nice in the finished product for ours. Let's see here. There's the paired warp floats and alternating blocks. That's kind of cool. Let me get this in frame here. Kind of honeycomb-esque. Some interest here that it's alternating. And then we have the spaced and paired. I see. So the spaced and paired would only require 1 pickup stick. The alternating block would require 2. I don't think I have 2 pickup sticks. And I think this one's a little bit too bubbly for what I want. I think in my head what I was thinking of was just these stripes of warp floats throughout. I don't know if I'll have the whole piece be these warp floats all the way down, or if I'll do a little bit towards the ends and then stop and just do tabby and then come back to it later. So we've got a 2 up, 2 down pattern. So this is going to be in multiples of 4. My current warp all the way across is not a multiple of 4. I would need to remove some from the pattern, and that might end up working out for the best anyways, because then we don't end up with some of the edges accidentally not getting wrapped. So this might be the best option here. I think I'm going to go with this, and then we'll just design on the loom the rest of the way, decide how much we want to do of this pattern. Okay, so I went behind the scenes a little bit and did my math over again and realized that that one pattern we were looking at in the book will not work for the number of warp threads I have. I totally forgot that when you do pickup sticks, you put your heddle in the down shed and you work based off of only the warp that is up, not the warp that is down. So I was doing all my math originally based off of the total number of warp threads when I should have been focusing on only the ones that are going to pop up when I'm in the down shed. So I went through the book a little bit again, but most of those are all based off of multiples of 4, and that's not going to work because when I have my total number of warp threads, what's left over, like the half mark, is 137, and 7s are really hard for stuff like that, right? If you're trying to get to a multiple of 4, it's going to get a little bit complicated and really hard to center my design on the piece. So I went to Pinterest and I looked at some existing pieces of cloth that I saw other people do, and in true fashion for this video and for this piece, I think I'm just going to wing it, and we'll go from there. I was a little overly optimistic this morning when I thought I was going to knock out the remaining setup, just figuring out my warp floats in an hour and, getting going on weaving. I figured if I get an early start, I will be able to get 2 feet of weaving done before lunch. Well, that didn't end up really working out. Like I mentioned before, I did my math all wrong, and that kind of comes with the territory when you decide to really not plan a project all that much beforehand and you're just going to wing it as you go. But the point here is we are set up, we are weaving, we are moving forward. I ended up choosing to, on my pickup stick, pick up groups of 5. So I'm picking up 5 strands and then not picking up 5, picking up 5, and I repeated that all the way across my warp. Made sure it was centered, and then in order to make sure that I don't have my, any threads accidentally slip on the edges, I let those stay in groups of 3. And I really like how it looked on the pickup stick. I think it will translate well to the woven fabric. So I've gone ahead and moved forward with setting up my footer, which is what I'm doing now. After I get my footer set up, I will go ahead and start weaving the cloth itself and start deciding when we're going to use the pickup stick and how. So I'm probably just going to let this be a very dynamic and fluid process of planning as I go. And so I'm just gonna go ahead and do that, and then I will check in with you again once everything is finished and ready to be cut off. See you guys soon. here's the finished piece, freshly cut off the loom. This is before any processing. I think later, once I wet finish it and everything, it will definitely loosen up. But you know, for all of the stops and starts and missteps and initially setting up this piece, I am so happy with how it turned out. I think the colors ended up melding together so beautifully. And I really did have a lot of fun once I started just going for it. So on one side, I have a repeat of those floats in 7 rows, and on the other side, I just have 1. And the reason why I did this was for sentimental reasons. So this is my fiance's and my 7th anniversary this year, and we're getting married in January in our 8th year. So I did 7 rows for the 7 years we've completed, and 1 row for the 8th year that we will be in the middle of when we get married. It really is so beautiful, and I can't wait to wear it. I think it's going to just help make, you know, that week even more special. And I'm glad you all got to enjoy this journey with me as I went. I hope you enjoyed this video. The next one I will plan a little bit better, I promise. And even if I don't, I'm sure we'll all have fun together as I, you know, stumble along. So thank you again. Have a wonderful day. See you again next time. Bye. Oh gosh. It's a good thing that I don't film these things live. Otherwise it would be a mess all the time. An absolute and complete mess.